The Next Generation Science Standards Immersion in Real Science. For 10 years, I was a park ranger educating about the natural world. My teaching style morphed over the years from technical heavy to becoming purely experiential. I wanted to get my students past the word on the piece of paper, the arbitrary name of something, and wanted them to experience the natural world through observation of taste, touch, smell, and wonder. I was hired by school districts to teach forest ecology to high schools. My specialty was ethnobotany, and I often spouted different medicinal uses of plants, their taxonomical relationships, and their habitat requirements as we walked through the forest. Many students took extensive notes while we were out in the field. Sometimes a student would be writing so fervently, I couldn't resist looking over their shoulder to find out what I had said that was so important that they felt they had to write it down. Students were good at taking in all this information, but as the years passed, I wondered what they were really learning and retaining. I eventually realized that it wasn't important that my students learn to know all the genus species names of the plants, or for that matter, how do you even identify them? I adjusted my teaching method to try to encourage more experiences in nature. This is ultimately what I wanted my students to impart with: a feeling, a reaction, and a sense of place. I moved away from the drag and brag technique and more towards observations. I eventually, purposely, moved away from naming things altogether. I had noted that once students had received the name of that bird, plant, or fungus, they generally stopped looking, moved on until they found the next thing for me to name. With this new style of no naming, if we came across a bird, we'd observe what it was doing and, as a group, try to figure out why it was doing that. Students didn't take to the style easily. They wanted a bird walk, the identification, the name, the check on their life list. No matter how much they prodded, I wouldn't name that bird. If they insisted, I would have them come up with a name for something, as the made-up names often incorporated the behavior they were observing. Some of my favorites include trunkhopper, brown leaf grabber, and water stalker. The last few years teaching outdoors, I moved to a new extreme. No notepads were allowed in my classes. I wanted participants to remember in a different way. I wanted them to observe and use all their senses to remember this experience. With the pencil paper crutch taken away, I found my students able to experience on a whole new level. The distraction of writing and memorizing just the word, just the name, had been eliminated altogether and gave a freedom that allowed a new world to open. 8 years ago, I became a traditional classroom teacher, teaching science in high school. My teaching goal was to marry what I had learned in my previous career with state standards. The restructuring of my teaching style was easy to do as an unaccountable park ranger. I had no curriculum requirements, no testing standards to meet. How was I to do what I knew was best for students within the confines of a traditional education system? The answer? Next generation science standards. No more rote memorization, no more confines of traditional curriculum. Kids can do science, experience science. NGSS incorporates three-dimensional learning and cross-cutting concepts. Science is about finding patterns. The patterns that I automatically see, the thoughts that I've been conditioned to discount, are not yet ingrained in students. I think this is why I enjoy teaching children science. They have a way of finding patterns that adults have never thought about before. This, combined with curiosity, makes great scientists. NGSS encourages these habits of mind in my classroom. The right answer isn't what is important, but rather the reasoning and logic behind that answer is what really matters. Science is a dynamic process which depends on creativity. Paint by numbers sums up the amount of creative license given to most students in traditional labs. NGSS gives them the colors, the multiple tools and mediums to let them create their own experimental masterpiece. Science is a way of thinking, and NGSS enables students to start figuring out how the world works.